And now,
ladies and gentlemen,
please fasten your seatbelts.
Welcome to PreneurCast.
Yeah, business cards being swapped, beers being drunk.
Can I say a nasty word? Can I say procrastination?
With Pete Williams and Dom Gosher.
How well did that go down?
We can talk about that entire thing in a very another rant and soapbox episode if we want to.
Visit us online at PreneurMedia.tv.
Hello everyone and welcome to this week's PreneurCast with me, Dom Goucher, and Pete Williams, my co-host.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Can we just mention the dedication? I want to bring to light the dedication that we have, because people have actually commented how good we are at producing this podcast every week, week in, week out. Just what time is it there, Pete?
5:07 in the morning. 5 a.m. It's all good. I've been up about for 15, 20 minutes. It's all good. I'm a morning person.
I'm not sure I've ever experienced 5 a.m. Certainly not in the last 10 or 15 years of my life anyway.
So you're probably experiencing it coming home from the nightclub with the beer in hand, whereas I'm getting up ready to start my day.
Yeah, I think that was the last time I experienced it. Yeah, it was probably under those circumstances. So I applaud you. I just wanted to highlight that, the dedication.
Thanks, mate. I'm definitely a morning person. Much prefer doing stuff in the morning. I thought of get that little mental win over most of the population. It's nice and peaceful and quiet and no distractions. So it's definitely the most productive time of my day. I don't get the normal sort of Silicon Valley, work till or start work at midnight type philosophy. I can't handle that. I'm in bed by 10:30 type thing, and then up at 5.
True. I have to say, I mean, I mentioned it recently in something else that we've worked on. You and I have talked about this, about managing sleep, and sleep being one of the most valuable resources that you have, one of the best ways to stay healthy. So I completely agree with you there. I'm still amazed that you can actually make it up at that time in the morning, but
my body clock's just used to it now. I just wake up without an alarm.
I guess, yeah.
Body clock's just used to it. With, obviously with all the Ironman training and stuff I did last year, that, swim sessions and bike sessions, started at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. Because you do an hour swim session at 6 till 7, then everyone else, goes off and trundles to their office jobs and stuff like that. So, my body clock's just a morning body clock anyway now, so it's just no different.
Oh, okay, all right. At that point, we've gone from bigging you up to me feeling really guilty. So we'll just move on.
Sounds like a good plan.
This week, we've had a great week this week. I've really, really enjoyed the past week, because you kicked off a survey on your blog over at PreneurMarketing.com, didn't you? Yeah,
we put together a survey just to sort of hear back from the whole community that we've got around that. There's obviously a lot of people who have listened to the show and have joined the community mailing list and comment on blog posts and all that sort of stuff. So I wanted to sort of get a bit more of a feel for who everybody was, who everybody is, get an idea of what sort of businesses everyone's operating. So we can do a few things with that information. We can highlight them on the blog post and sort of do spotlights and case studies of some fantastic things that people are doing and implementing. And also we can make sure we do relevant podcast episodes and blog posts that really resonate with people and answer the questions that they have. So it was a very interesting kind of survey. I got some fantastic feedback. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed reading the feedback as well. It's been great and fascinating to find out the range of readers, viewers, listeners, whatever you want to call them, to the different things that we do. Not just your blog, but we got feedback about the podcast and everything. So it's been great. I've really, really enjoyed getting that feedback. It's always good to get feedback. We ask for it on the podcast every week. We ask that you go to PreneurMedia.tv and comment there, give us feedback and ideas, and also on iTunes.
Well, speaking about the PreneurMedia.tv website, when it comes to the feedback, we've actually got on that site a way for people to leave us voicemail messages as well, which we're receiving a few of, and we should start trying to implement them back into the show. So if you've got a specific question that you want answered, or you just want some general feedback that you'd love to sort of put on the show. And if you want to do a bit of an elevator pitch after you mention how good we are, we could probably not edit that out and include a little pitch for your own business. So it could be some free exposure if you give us some love. So head over to PreneurMedia.tv, and on the right-hand side of the site is a leave a voicemail icon. You click that, it pops up with a little window where you can just hit record and start talking, and it'll send the voicemail straight to us. So questions, feedback, suggestions, we're all ears for that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. We actually really enjoy getting those. It's a version of Pete's little optimization trick of replying to emails with audio. It's a great way for you folks to get in contact with us. If you don't want us to feature whatever it is you put in there on the show, then say so at the end of the message. But as Pete says, I'll happily not edit out plugs for your brand or service if it's appropriate. And so we would love to hear from you in any way that you want to contact us. So yeah, definitely try out that service. Who's the service with?
Speaker Pipe or Speak Pipe, I think it is.
SpeakPipe.
SpeakPipe, there you go. SpeakPipe, great little service.
So it's great. We're just trying that out now. We've already had quite a few people use it. It seems to be working well for us. Speaking of things that we use, and did you see that segue? Are you impressed by that?
No, that was almost flawless until you pointed it out.
Yeah, sorry. Do you know what? Next, after the slick segues, I'm going for sound effects next.
Ooh.
Actually, I'm not. I'm not going to do that. Let's talk about one of our new sponsors. We've got a new sponsor this week, and just a quick mention of them. We don't want to make a big deal out of this, but Pete, now that you're on the show, I would like you to just talk a little bit about Shoeboxed, because you're the guy who uses this more than me. Yeah,
I've been using their service for probably 12 months now, I'd say, and it's a really cool service. That what they basically do is they scan, sort, and file all your important documents. So, as you sort of, trundle around the working week, you get receipts and tax invoices and all that sort of stuff that gets piled up. And obviously you need to keep them for tax purposes to ensure you're getting the savings that's applicable. Because, if you're a business and you're in Australia and you've got a 30% tax rate, anytime you can actually class something as a business expense and write it off, you're getting a 30% discount. So, when it comes to things like the 7 levers and the margin episode, or the margin lever, where you're trying to pull and reduce or increase your margins by 10% to sort of have that result, is doing things like making sure you actually maximise your tax deductions is a huge way that can go towards that. And Shoebox really helps with that, because what it allows you to do is just they send you a big blue envelope that in there you put all your receipts, all your tax invoices, your business cards as well, and you post it to them. It's all part of the solution. They'll then go and scan all of that, human verify it, and then sort it automatically into certain categories. So they have sort of an ever-growing tagging database of, this particular business is a restaurant, this type of business is a hardware store, whatever it might be, and they'll automatically categorise each of your receipts and tax invoices into the appropriate expense bucket, so to speak. So it makes it really, really easy for you to, when you're trying to work out what's deductible of your expenses and what's not, they do it all for you and automate that as part of their process. And then when it comes to business cards and things like that, they'll actually scan the business card and turn it into an address book ready format. So if you're out networking quite a bit and all that sort of stuff and getting business cards, take them home, and rather than having to manipulate them yourself and write them out and put them into your address book, Shoebox does that for you, and then allows you to simply download all the new address book details and throw it straight into your address book, into your Google contacts, into send out cards of using that sort of service. So it's really, really cool to sort of take all that admin stuff away from you on a very, very easy monthly basis. And I just keep that blue envelope in the back pouch of my my briefcase, and when I'm out and about getting receipts, I just shove it straight into the blue envelope, and then once every 2 weeks just seal it up and send it off, and they'll send it back to you with a new blue envelope for the next month. It's a fantastic service.
It really is quite amazing, and there's a lot of lessons in that. It's not just about recommending a service that we use, and you certainly use it a lot more than me. But it's not just about that. It's about why we use it and what it gives to us as entrepreneurs, as business people. And in this case, that is one of those, as you say, talking to the margin lever from the 7 levers. It's that monitoring and measuring. you're actually keeping an eye on these things, and you've set a process in place to do it. And that the idea of sticking that blue envelope in the back pocket of your bag, as you say, and wherever you go, because usually if you're spending money, you're out. So if you've got that bag with you, and you just get that receipt, or when you get back to the office or back home or wherever it is, and stick it in that envelope every 2 weeks, seal it up. You don't have to have shoe boxes in your house with these things in, or envelopes with dates on them, or any of that stuff. The quality of the service is amazing. As you say, that the way that they are a learning system, and they organise it for you, it makes measuring and monitoring that stuff a lot less painful. And that's, I think, why a lot of people don't measure and monitor things, because it's painful for them. So that's really why we're recommending Shoeboxed at the moment. So pop over to preneurmedia.tv/shoeboxed to try that out.
Absolutely. I just find it so automated, it's so systemized, and there's, which is what I try to do everything. There's just leverage in it, which is great. Okay,
let's move on with the episode. Let's have some stats from this survey. Let's have a look at what the general stuff that we found out before we get into the meat of it.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'm going to try and do a proper blog post on this in the next couple of weeks with sort of nice graphical displays of all the the results and things like that. But I was really excited about some of the stuff we got back. In terms of one of the questions was what type of business do you have, and was it a mix of a bit of online and a bit of offline type business? Was it a web-based business, or was it a real-world bricks and mortar type store? And I was really surprised with the results. 32.79% of respondents said they've got a mix, so they've got a bit of an online business and a bit of an offline business, which was interesting. 31.15% has web-based businesses, so they sell stuff online. 29% have real-world businesses, and then the remainder is sort of just getting started. So it was really cool to see a nice broad range of businesses out there. So that was very, very cool to see. And then if you sort of break down even further, because I used woofood.com, which is a fantastic service for doing surveys, because it can sort of automate or dynamically change the questions that somebody answers based on their previous responses to earlier questions. So, for example, based on what type of business they had, they then got a follow-up question finding out a bit more about sort of how they categorise that type of business. So out of the real-world businesses, 26% of them were service-based B2B businesses, so wholesalers, phone system sales, doing direct business-to-business type of stuff with a service element. 22% were B2C service businesses, so accountants, travel agents, roof tilers, that kind of thing. And 7% were bricks and mortar retail stores, and then about 7% were hard-working tradies. So that's where the builder and mechanics really fit in. So the roof tiles probably were actually more in that hard-working trade type business. So it was a really kind of eclectic mix, which was very, very cool. And similar sort of stats with the web-based businesses. 31% were selling ebooks and information. 30-odd%, or 27-ish% were e-commerce sales, so selling real stuff to real people. And then about 23% of people were making money from blogging and affiliate marketing, which was, again, a nice, widespread of people doing a whole range of different stuff, which was very cool.
I just found it nice to find out what we kind of thought we knew about some of this stuff, which is that we're trying to not be specific to a particular type of business when we talk on the podcast, and certainly not when you've been working on your blog. I mean, you've been writing on that blog for years now, and it's not focused on any particular kind of marketing or any particular kind of business. It's general information, general advice. We've brought all that together. When we talk about the 7 levers, that's a classic example of how the things that we talk about, the core business principles, are the same. It doesn't matter what you're doing. So it was great to see that and kind of get some numbers against it, just to find out that we've got this wide range of people in our audience, in the Preneur community, that are listening and feeding back.
So I was going to say, and the best stat about the community that I love the most, and this is what really made me smile, was that 50.88%, so over half of the Preneur community, are making a full-time income from their own business. Because obviously in so many, communities where, we probably wouldn't call them a community really, so many sort of marketing lists, so many people on those lists don't actually do anything, and that sort of says a lot to me. Whereas if over half the people in our community are making a full-time income self-employed, which was just awesome. You had like 22% of people were making a nice side income, but still working for the man. So obviously, what we're teaching, what we're talking about, is obviously helping people because they're actually implementing this stuff because it's easy, it's actionable and it's measurable, and they're getting results. They've got, if you look at it, if you add up the math, you've got 51 roughly % full-time income, 22% side income, so what's that, 73%, and then 7% are doing so while they have staff. So 80% of people, this is what freaked me out, and I love this, 80% of people in this Preneur community are actually making a significant amount of money or more, which is just so cool, which means obviously the stuff we're talking about is helping people, they're implementing it, and it's actually working, which is so cool to see.
Yeah, and I think that really was, for me, the best part of this survey, was to find out the range of people, and then to find out that we were making a difference. Yeah. And in that positive way, that as you say, 80% of people are using this information to build their own business, to bring themselves direct revenue. So there were people in there, as you say, that it's partial full-time employment, partial side income, but it's a huge number that were self-employed or built or running their own business or whatever. And it was great to see that and get that feedback.
Because I speak to so many other people who sort of do this sort of stuff, and it's amazing they kind of rely on the big chunk of their marketplace who actually don't make money. That's sort of their business model. I always find that very strange, but it's a whole nother, as P. Williams says, rant and soapbox.
Okay, so let's get to the meat of this episode. Let's get to why we've brought this up. And I'm going to actually, we very often title the shows after the show, because we don't always know what we're going to talk about in detail. But Pete, you came up with the title for this show, and I think it's important to talk about it now, which is that you titled the show "Unfrequently Answered Questions." Because we had a section in the survey for anyone who hasn't filled out the survey. There's a very small little piece in the survey which a lot of people have taken the opportunity to fill out, and hopefully we're going to surprise a few people and give a lot of value here, because in the survey there was a spot that said if you could ask any 2 questions, what would they be? Now bear in mind that Pete and I run the 7 Levers Mastermind group, where people can join with us, and we'll work one-on-one with them and as part of the group also towards benefiting their business and improving their business, applying the 7 Levers in a mastermind situation. So this is kind of a miniature version of that. You get to ask us questions and we're going to answer them. Now, we've asked for feedback before, we asked for comments in the iTunes and so on, and people have asked us the odd question and we've tried to bring it in, but this is one huge pile of questions. So Pete and I are going to try and go through these. There's no way we're going to get through. The response was huge to this. There's no way we're going to get through all of them in one show, so we're going to roll them up into a couple of shows and just keep going. If we keep getting feedback, we're going to keep going with this and do it on a semi-regular basis. So what I thought was, because there were some common threads, even though these business people were disparate, they're from different walks of life, different businesses in different markets, there were some common threads to the questions. So I'm going to group those common questions up, and hopefully we can address those in this show. And then I'm going to kind of highlight some of the other ones. But we are going to try and work our way through as many of the questions that were asked, and try and help as many people, try and give as much feedback as we can. So I'm going to kick off. I think this is pretty much the most common question, most repeated question throughout, which is, if you started from scratch, what business would you be starting? What would you be looking to start? So what would you be, a product or a services-based business? And it's kind of a compound question made up of quite a couple of things. So what business would you start? And potentially what market, although obviously that's a little bit of a wide question, and maybe we can't answer that one. But the other one that goes after that, which is equally valuable, which is what marketing technique or what area of marketing would you focus on to get the most leverage to get that business off the ground? Because as you said, Pete, there's a few people in this survey, quite a few people, that are either running their own business, are doing their own business as a sideline, or are starting up. So this is where this question, I think, is coming from. Is these people are looking to see what we would do. So have you got a response to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, obviously there's two parts to that question. So the first one around what business would I start, I think it comes, and it's probably pretty obvious that for me it's about leverage. So it's trying to find a business that I can get the most leverage out of. So things like e-commerce sites. I like the idea of, online business, obviously, but for all the reasons we've talked about on all the past episodes combined. But, primarily it gives you a huge audience. There's lots of leverage in that. There's not as much sort of, one-to-one selling, although that's where you do make the big sales, to get to reach critical mass anyway. I think there's a lot of leverage in online stores. And I do prefer the e-commerce, real stuff to real people kind of thing, rather than the information marketing sort of stuff. I just, personally have had much more enjoyment and success selling real stuff to real people. So I'd be going down that avenue, trying to find somewhere which I can tackle, an industry I could tackle that has dropship ability. So I don't have to hold the stock and manage that sort of stuff, although we do with our businesses because the volumes justify it and a whole bunch of other reasons. But primarily, we try and start all the businesses we do in those e-commerce plays based around, let's start that with a dropshipping model so we can reduce our overheads. And we just primarily focus on sales and marketing to begin with, because that's what generates the revenue. And then as the business matures, then we try and increase margins by bringing stock in-house, because we get better buys and that's reduced shipping costs and there's more margin in that. So that's sort of, we get up and operational by focusing on sales and marketing. And then when we start really working and pulling those 7 levers, and one being the margin lever, obviously, that's when we start looking at bringing stuff in-house and things like that. So that's sort of one avenue. The other side of the coin is, I do think, software as a service or applications does have a very appealing space right now. There's a lot of competition and there's a lot of noise in there, but I think, it's the software as a service, or particularly like the app stuff, which I don't think you're never going to make an app necessarily that's going to be like an Instagram type of scenario. So I think if you're trying to sort of build a $1 billion business, I wouldn't say apps, but if you're looking at sort of starting a nice side income while you're working for the man, then use parlaying that income into something bigger. Apps are a good way to go, because you're limiting the interaction with customers, and the more interaction with customers you have to have, the more labour intensive that is and the less leverage you have. So with businesses that allow you to have some arm's length from a customer interaction, now I'm not saying reducing your customer service or the quality you give your customers, that's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is just reducing the interaction with customers and making it at arm's length can be very, very good, particularly if you are doing this as a side income to start with, trying to reduce that labour-intensive customer service side of things.
Cool. Just to interrupt you briefly there, just a little bit of technical terminology. If anybody doesn't know what drop shipping means, it is an excellent way to get started. There are a number of businesses out there, and basically what they do is they allow you to take an order for a product that they have in stock, and they will fulfill that order for you from their depot or warehouse or storage location. So you do the billing, you place the order with them, and they do the shipping, and it appears that it came from you in 9 cases out of 10. So your initial startup costs are incredibly low because you don't pay to hold stock, which is your point, Pete, wasn't it? It was that you sacrifice a bit of margin because it's usually costs you more, but you get going for basically nothing.
Exactly right. So that's how I would be dipping my toe in the water if I was starting from scratch.
Cool. Now, I love that, and I'm going to come back to the leverage comment, because we're all about leverage, and we're going to definitely carry on being all about leverage. I love the dropshipping idea. I don't know, I have an allergy to product, physical things. I just have an allergy. I don't know why. I just do. I think it's because I've not really been involved in that side of business. I come from a services background. Historically, in all the different companies that I've worked for and businesses and things, it's always been a services-based thing. And if I was starting again from scratch, I would not do a services-based business, I don't think. From a leverage point of view, it's not the highest leverage you can do. Let's put it that way. I love your comment about clients. My first kind of real boss in the world. I have to say this. He knows who he is. He had a phrase which was, "Clients, they're very overrated." He was one of those people that like to keep clients at a certain arm's length. But yeah, you made a valid comment about there are certain businesses out there that allow you to provide quality, to provide a good service or a good product or whatever, without actually being face to face all the time with clients. You're not so keen on info products in terms of startup cost, and that, some of these questions did come from people that were specifically asking about startups or getting started in this. There's a heck of a lot of leverage in an information product.
Absolutely, no question about that at all.
In terms of taking what's in your head, getting it down in some form, whether it's as an ebook or an audio training course or a video-based training course. Obviously, these are things that I know a lot about, and I produce a lot of these things, so I can speak to this quite eloquently. There's a phenomenal amount of leverage in producing something like that, and it then being there to be sold. It's not a physical object. It doesn't need physical delivery. It can be sold 24 hours a day. It's the internet dream, and I'm a little bit against positioning it that way because it's not as easy as some people will have you think. But, again, your point, software and software as a service, after the initial development cost or effort, depending on how you choose to do it, and it's almost the same as an info product at that point. It's something that can be sold or used online, electronically. You're not directly interfacing with a client. You're providing a quality thing. There's a degree of creativity in it, which I think a lot of people are into. You can get a great return on investment for the initial effort. I think one of it's a little quirk, but it does speak to a question that was asked in there, is if you are doing this as a sideline, publishing a piece of software, well, that is the entity, that's the item of sale. Whereas if you publish an information product, some people are a little bit twitchy about putting their name on something while they're still working for somebody else.
Yeah, that's a very good point as well.
So yeah, I think there's a range there. Personally, my immediate reflex, because of my skill set and because of the things that we teach about, we've already mentioned this in our content leverage system, how easy it can be to produce an information product or produce information for online distribution. My reflex action, if somebody came to me and asked me, I would say information product. But if I sat back and maybe understood a little bit about what they wanted to achieve, I think I might veer towards your software thing. But I don't think I'd ever do physical product.
Fair enough.
But it is, and you've been incredibly successful selling physical product. So you've got a lot more experience of how, in inverted commas, easy that can be.
Very true.
So what about marketing? How would you're starting from scratch, what kind of things would you focus on doing to get the initial word out?
Yeah, look, I'm going to answer that question in two ways. Firstly, probably the annoying response is go and listen to the Preneur Hierarchy episode of PreneurCast, because that is all about where to focus your initial marketing and go back through that, because that kind of really sums it up. Because the two things I would be focusing on is where do my target market go to look for this solution that I sell? And then secondly, it'll be putting some systems in place to market and close those prospects and past customers into secondary and further sales. So, where for most businesses and most people, when they've got their wallets or their purses half open and are proactively looking for a solution to their problem, be it some information they want to buy, or a physical product they want to purchase, or a service they want to have completed, most people generally are going to the internet to find those solutions. So things like Google AdWords, getting listed in Google Maps, getting listed in all the other sort of various industry leading directories like Yelp, or your local Yellow Pages type directories that are used in various spaces around in various niches in various countries. So I'd be very much making sure I plaster my business and maximise my exposure in the places that people are looking. Before we do anything else, just try and make sure you think, if I had this problem, I need a solution, what would I do to solve that? Would I go to Google? Would I go to Yelp? Would I go to my Google Maps on my iPhone? Where would I go and what would I do? And where would I be looking? And making sure you get in front of those eyeballs. That's the primary place to start, because it's going to give you the most leverage, the greatest ROI. And generally, in most circumstances these days, that type of positioning and marketing is generally a CPA or a CPC type direct response cost. And what I mean by that is it's your cost per click or cost per acquisition. So you only have to pay when you get a result. You're not paying for eyeballs, you're paying for a result, which is obviously a much better cash flow advantageous option.
Absolutely. I mean, that little segment there almost tempted me to rename this entire podcast into the Leverage Podcast, because that's absolutely that's everything you just said. I don't think it's annoying to suggest that people review the Preneur hierarchy, because so many people don't look at their marketing efforts that way. So many people go the spray and pray route. And when you start out, there were quite a few questions. The origin of this as the primary common question was because people were saying, I'm starting out, I don't have a lot of spare funding. It's all about focus and leverage. It doesn't matter whether you've got no money or all the money in the world. You should still be focusing on leverage. You should still be focusing on getting the maximum result. And the top of the pyramid in the Preneur hierarchy, the spray and pray, is the last place. And certainly, if you're starting out or got low funding for the project, that's the last place you should go. You should focus in those lower levels. And yeah, Pete, as you say, the first question to ask is, where are the people that have the problem that I solve? Which I just think that's so succinct. That's exactly spot on. Where are they? Where will they go? And again, doubling up on the leverage with that idea of only paying if you get a result by using the online techniques. And if you can't use online, it's about focusing. It's about knowing that you're going to put your message in front of the right people. A classic example. This is I actually, for some reason, was thinking about this earlier today. Anyway, and you just reminded me of this. I came across years ago a private school, however the terminology goes around the world, but basically a school that you have to apply to, be accepted for, and then pay to attend. So there's a waiting list. In fact, there's a huge waiting list. There's But eventually, if you become complacent in a situation like that, where you think you've got a huge waiting list, eventually that waiting list is going to run out. You've got to plan a long way ahead. And this particular school came up with the idea that when you go, and perhaps Pete, you might find out about this one day soon. When you go into hospital to have a child, a lot of hospitals now provide new parent packs. And they approach the hospitals in the local area, because it's a local school, in the local area, they focus their marketing, they approach the local hospitals and said, can we put marketing for our school in your new parent pack?
Interesting.
That is about as laser targeted you can get in an offline world.
Very, very cool. And that's it. It's thinking about sort of, that's awesome. That is very cool.
But that example of that school doing that is a classic example of what we're talking about. If you need to use that kind of marketing method that you're going to print something out, or you've got to go offline to reach these people, or even as we've talked about in one of our very, very early podcasts, just standing out. You know, if you type into Google, if you type in a highly searched phrase, then you're going to see huge piles of adverts. Doesn't matter what it is, if it's a highly competitive phrase, and even if you've got the money to pay to be listed in that list of the top 3 adverts, so people want to actually see your advert on Google or wherever, you've got to work very, 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 very hard to stand out. And these people are in a highly competitive world, the private schooling world, and so it was actually a great way to stand out. Yeah. That they're in front of people, really at the pivotal moment, and they got their message there. So that's not spray and pray marketing. That's actually the opposite, to me.
Absolutely.
I just to build on that, just to before we finish on that as our comment. There is a little tiny question, a little quiet question from a very polite person who asked, if I could only do one marketing activity today, what should I do? And my answer builds on what we've just talked about. What would you say, Pete?
That's a hard question to answer without any context.
Okay, I'll give you my answer.
Okay.
Because, as I say, it comes from the Preneur hierarchy, and it actually builds and speaks to something that you've just said. If I could only do one marketing activity today, what would I do? I would ask my existing customers or my prospects what their problems or pain is.
Yeah.
Because by finding out what your prospects or your customers want, you can go away, find it, build it, make it, record it, source it from wherever, and give it to them.
Which is what this survey, ironically, was all about.
There you go.
How's that full circle?
Look, how's that for full circle? I didn't even plan that. But that's my answer to that. And I it's a little bit high-level thinking, in a way, and a very, very unfrequently given answer, definitely. I imagine a lot of people would answer with, Google AdWords or whatever, some specific, not strategic, not tactical, but actual thing. So, but yeah.
I like it. I think that's a very good answer.
Why, thank you, sir. From you, that's a true compliment.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Let's move on with this.
I want to really hit some questions, some additional questions this episode, and we'll definitely do this again, because obviously there's plenty of questions, and maybe every couple of weeks we'll delve back into the unfrequently answered question list, and we'll do another show like this.
Okay, so I'm going to pull another common. The reason why I pick these common ones is because they're addressing a lot of people's questions. And then the next common question that I've got here is, what do you focus on? How do you choose what to focus on in any given day? What tasks, what business tasks, what business processes? What do you focus on? Versus, for example, what do you outsource, or what do you just say, I'm not going to worry about that. I'll get around to that. Where do you put your primary focus?
Yeah, okay. I think it's definitely trying to break away that, core versus mechanic stuff we spoke about previously. So in terms of what I outsource, I try and outsource anything that's mechanical as best I can. And what I mean by that, if you haven't heard that particular episode of PreneurCast, it's very much about anything that doesn't apply direct thought, is rinse and repeatable, or is just very mechanical in its function. I try and get that done by somebody else as much as possible, so I can worry about the core elements of my business, which is either content creation related stuff or strategic direction and planning. They're the two big things that I try and focus on, because the tools and the tactics and that sort of stuff is easy. That building an AdWords account, for example, is easy, and there's plenty of people who can do that for you. And when you're starting out, there may be times, and it makes perfect sense to do it yourself, but you've got to really break up in your mind and have a clear distinction between my strategic and core time versus my mechanical time in the business. So that's sort of, I guess, the esoteric kind of answer. In terms of how I do it, it comes down to OmniFocus and David Allen's getting things done process, and actually sort of, okay, these are all the projects I'm working on right now, and then just fundamentally have what is the one next action I need to do for each one of these projects to move it forward today. So it's not about necessarily, and sometimes depending on deadlines, things change and have to sort of spend the whole day working on one particular project. But I do try my hardest to tick off one action per project per day, no matter how small it is, even if it's just replying to an email relating to one particular project. So that way there is progress and momentum. No matter how small the momentum, obviously it can build up over time. So that's what that's how I do try and stay on top of everything. 'Cause there is, a lot of pies that have my fingers in them. And I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. I think it does. Certainly, I think it answers both of them. I would basically just say ditto for the how. With what you said, I would say the same thing. Is get some kind of system to make sure you've got something keeping hold of what it is that needs doing, and something keeping track of what you need to do next, and just keeping that, touching each thing and keeping momentum. For anybody who hasn't looked at the GTD, the Getting Things Done idea, it's well worth a look. It's well worth a look if you have to manage even a few things, because the core principle of having a trusted place that you basically make a note of everything you've got to get done made a huge difference to my productivity, which is one of the things that we talk about. In terms of what to focus on, absolutely, again, 100%. Anything that we call it mechanics, and I'll put a link to the mechanics show in the show notes. Anything that you can basically easily write down the steps to do it, that's mechanics. That's what you shouldn't be doing. You should maybe put aside some time every week to look at the things that are mechanics and make it a regular task to write down what to do and then go find somebody else to go do it. Which I do try on a regular basis to do as a way of optimizing my business. But basically, I focus on the things that, here we come back to the leverage podcast again, the things with the most leverage.
Well, yeah. Something that kind of just popped into my head is that, I'm going to see how well I can articulate this at 6 a.m. I think the hardest thing or the greatest skill you can develop as an entrepreneur is the discipline to trust your past self. The discipline to trust your past self. And what I mean by that is, if on a Sunday night you plan out, you sit down, you spend an hour doing your Getting Things Done schedule, your next actions in sequential order for each project. And that will make sense if you actually understand the GTD principles. Or even if you simply, the night before you go to bed and you write a list of the things you need to achieve the following day. A very rudimentary, basic sort of to-do list manager. And what I think you need to do, though, is the following day, trust that person who did that plan the night before or the Sunday night, and stick to the plan. So I think so many people, what they do is, and everyone does this, and it's just that discipline to catch yourself doing it. And I think that's the biggest thing. Is it's not about, I think discipline is not necessarily actually just doing it. It's catching yourself doing it and then realizing and fixing it. And what you're trying to catch yourself doing is, in the moment of the following day when you're actually doing stuff, don't make rash changes to your to-do list. Because so many people, I think, they have that plan for the day and they don't action the plan, don't implement the plan, don't fulfill that plan, because they make calls, they make decisions, they make choices in the moment of what to do. And I think that can be very dangerous. So if you can have that skill set, and I wish I could have here's the pill to take, here's the way to do that, but just to sort of go, okay, the night before or the morning of, who cares when it is, you set out your schedule of what needs to get done. And you do that to the exclusion of all else, and then you have that habit of doing that daily. I think that is really helps you focus, because you plan out what you need to do, and then you just do that. You don't change it on the fly. And too many people I see, me included, change the action plan mid-battle. And I think if you speak to any of the old war veterans and Sun Tzu and George, what's his name, Patton, or General Patton, or whatever it is, if you're halfway into battle, it's probably not always the smartest thing to start thinking about, running in a different direction, because you'll run straight into the enemy, potentially. There's an analogy within an analogy on top of an analogy.
Yeah, I think you've done very well for 6 a.m, Pete, and I'm going to save you from yourself there. It's a really good point, actually. It really is. I actually like it. You'd lost me to begin with the trust the guy from the past thing, but it worked out well in the end. Seriously, it's a very, very good point. Before you start, in terms of helping yourself focus on things, which is a big, big topic, before you start any task or series of tasks, get an idea of what it is you're trying to achieve, and make sure you've got something other than just the next thing you're going to do planned out, because you'll always be susceptible to the phone ringing or checking your email and firefighting or just knee-jerk reactions. And it does happen to everybody, but the more that you have an idea with a clear head, i.e. at the end of the previous day or the beginning of that day, before the world descends on you and changes the plan, if you have a clear idea of what your plan is, you can always come back to it. So I think that's a really good point. My point, and I kind of made this in the mechanics show, in terms of just to summarise what to focus on. I'll give you this little saying, because I like my sayings. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Absolutely.
A lot of people do things because, well, they can do it, so why shouldn't they? But it isn't necessarily the best use of your time, and therefore the best leverage in your business. So I think we've definitely covered that one. So let's jump ahead, because this is probably going to be a little bit of a run over show, but it's just great stuff. I'm loving kind of giving some value back to people that have taken time to fill out our survey. So we'll let it run for a little bit. But another kind of common question, and one that we've had in the past, to the point that you actually did something about this to answer the question, was how do you cut through the noise of information overload?
Noise reduction? That doesn't really help me, though, because it's me and my team who actually create that. So how do I cut through the noise? A whole range of filters, and filters to the the real raw extent of email filters. So certain things that I want to consume later on don't hit my inbox and distract me when I'm trying to be proactive, and that's sort of covered in a recent blog post over at PreneurMarketing.com, and I think we actually covered that in one of the earlier PreneurCast podcast episodes as well. So really actually having Gmail filters on to sort of filter your email, to sort of move some of that noise that you need to have on reference out of your inbox automatically. So there's sort of that low level filters, and then I think it's just high level filters, and just trying to not go and spend too much time or dig or Reddit every day, and having that discipline to do that.
It's great. Honestly, I think filters is the answer, and it's about thinking about that in as wide a way as you can. I use filters. I use software and tool filters like Gmail. I use the Gmail self-filtering, automatic things, as you say, that move things away from your line of sight, so you don't read. If you're on an email list, it doesn't appear in your inbox. All that appears in my inbox is things from clients that need dealing with.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't need me to deal with it in the working day, then it's not in front of my face. That's a type of filter. But another type of filter is actually getting somebody to deal with something for you, to summarize information. One of the great things, I know a couple of people that do this. All these information products out there, you're trying to learn what there is, all the new techniques, or even old techniques that have been around for years that you just never got round to. Listening to that, even, audio on tape or audio on CD or now downloadable audio course. Some of these things go on for 8, 10, 12 hours.
Is this the pain point you're experiencing right now?
there may be an element of my own personal experience in this. Yes, Peter. But anyway, we'll segue away from that.
The email at 11 o'clock last night going, what? That thing's 8 hours long. Are you serious?
But I know people that what they do is they actually get people to consume the content for them. They pay their staff to consume the content and summarize it and give them the summary. You know, we do it. One of our regular sponsors, the Read It For Me service. You know, they summarize books. They summarize the current business and personal development information that's out there into these multimedia materials that you can go and basically you can consume an entire book in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, because it reduces the noise.
The
you know, let's be honest, as an author myself and being completely transparent, you know, a lot of books can be written in a lot less words, but they're padded out for various reasons and very honest reasons. But you know, you can get the core for most books in a summary, and then if you want to delve deeper into it, then you invest in the full book and really get the meat. But yeah, things like Read It For Me is a service that reduces the noise. That's exactly what it does.
Yeah. And just because they are a sponsor, if you go to readitfor.me/PreneurCast, you'll try out their service and get a discount if you sign up. So there you go. Sponsorship, slotted that in. Not on purpose, it was relevant to the question. But yeah, filters, that's the answer. It's to cut through noise, filters. There's now people and services and technologies and tools out there to provide you with filters and ways of filter. Oh, you can just filter it yourself. Just close the door in the office. Yeah, switch off the phone, heaven forfend. Don't have the email client running all the time. Whatever level of noise it is you're talking about, it's about applying an appropriate filter. Yep. I think that's it. There you go. Yeah?
Awesome.
Okay, as a little sorbet, before we move into some of the specifics, we are pushing time, but there's a couple of things maybe we could pick up before we close this one. I just want to flag a couple of the more humorous questions.
Okay.
That popped in. My personal favourite for the whole so far, whoever you were, bless you. How can I get my iPhone to play Dom at 2 speed and Pete at 1 speed automatically?
Love it. Maybe we should start doing a PreneurCast episode where we actually edit that out. That way we actually get one of our team to actually edit out put me on 1 speed and then 2 speed you up. That might be a bonus edition we can start releasing.
A special edition of the PreneurCast.
Maybe the 5 a.m. start might be a solution. I don't know how I've been today, but maybe that could be a solution. We start doing the podcast at 4 a.m. when I'm even more asleep.
You could be onto something there, so let's not push that one. And another one, which is it's actually not an uncommon question, but it's not totally relevant to the entire community. Someone, bless them, asked if they can how they can see more of my work, because everybody sees your work all over the different products and blogs and things that you produce, but my work is a little bit harder to see and spot and identify. So somebody said
they can buy the stuff we sell.
Yeah, pretty much anything that Pete's produced in the last year or so was done by me, so you can do it that way by all means. In all seriousness, if you want to contact either of us directly to ask us a question about masterminds or providing services or anything like that, as anybody who has already done this will tell you, we do respond. We're happy to. Drop us an email at PreneurCast@PreneurGroup.com, or in any one of the other ways that we talk about getting in touch with us. On Twitter or whatever it might be. Pete is at Preneur on Twitter. I am at dgoucher. It's a little bit harder to spell, but you'll find me. Drop us a line and we'll get back to you. We always do. People will tell you. And one more is can you run more masterminds, please?
Okay.
If you insist, folks, if you insist. We do have plans to bring back the Seven Levers Mastermind. Look, we are pushing an hour here, folks. We have plenty more questions to answer. Hopefully this show has, by picking these common questions, the show has addressed a lot of issues that a lot of you are interested in. We're going to go back through, we're going to pick some more out, we're going to plan another show out, and we are going to come back to this because hopefully it's a high value thing for you as members of the Preneur community to get this feedback from us, without having to be a member of our mastermind or whatever. But hopefully it's been a good show and been interesting. Just our other sponsor, I'll put last sponsorship message in, is audible.com. Pete, have you been using Audible this week?
Yeah, I've actually, with the whole Facebook IPO discussions that are continually happening every 5 minutes on the internet.
Do you wear a hoodie to the office, Peter?
I've actually got a hoodie on right now.
Oh dear.
A grey,
careful. Apparently,
grey Nike hoodie.
Apparently that is disrespectful. Although I did read a really funny comment about that because somebody complained that Mark Zuckerberg piled into the IPO meeting with a hoodie on, and some suit complained. And one of the witty comments was, let's look at this then, shall we? CEO of Yahoo, no hoodie. CEO of AOL, no hoodie. CEO of Facebook, hoodie. Remind me again how much they're worth?
Yeah, exactly. I just find that ridiculous. Like, okay, hang on. You're an investor wanting to give this guy money, and you're offended by how he acts. Shouldn't you be sucking up to him?
Yeah.
That's a whole. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
But,
anyway, so you've been into the Facebook IPO, and
I was recommended a really cool book called The Facebook Effect, which I'm listening to on Audible, and it's the history of Facebook, but not the social network history of Facebook. So it's it sort of talks about the strategery. I love that made up word. The strategery of Facebook's growth, and it really.
I was waiting to see where you got that in.
It really documents, all the steps that happened in the growth of Facebook from when it started, obviously, and that whole sort of social network story. But then it talks about who they actually got as their initial seed investors, and why they took their money as opposed to other people's money, and why they sort of implemented certain platform and functionality into the site. And the really cool thing that I'm getting out of the book is the way Zuckerberg and their team look at Facebook is fundamentally they're not a content provider. They're not something like MySpace, who are a content provider. They're a platform provider. So all they do is create a platform, and they treat their platform like a country, and all they do is make policies like a government. Like, that's the extent of their business model. And if you look at it through that context, it's really interesting to see everything Facebook does makes perfect sense when you look at it, that all they're trying to do is create a country fundamentally, and do what a government does to a country, is create the infrastructure and then provide policy, and then let other people generate revenue and commerce inside that country, inside that community. And all I do is just guide and manage those policies. So it's a really interesting book. I'm really, really enjoying it. It's sort of very interesting to sort of see how the business grew, and all that sort of fun negotiation tactics and values they got and all that sort of stuff. But it's really cool to see that side of things as well.
Cool. And I'm going to use you as a filter because you're going through that, and you've told me it's of value and it's of interest, and so I'm going to put that on my list of things to read. So there you go. There's an example of us using filters. But that's you using Audible, the audio book service. You're listening to that as you go about doing other things, I imagine. Yep. And you can get a trial of the Audible service with a free download of a book from their ridiculous library of every kind of book there is, really, by going to audibletrial.com/PreneurCast. We strongly recommend that you give that one a try in terms of leverage of your time, what to focus on and how to focus on it. That's a great way to maximise your time out there. One last thing is something that's one of those little comments at the bottom of the survey, and someone made the point that they're not the only person that does this, but they made the point that they're out and about and listening to us when they're out and about. On our podcast, it's the way that they listen to us. People do it while they're jogging or exercising or walking the dog or whatever it is. And they pointed out that, and I have this problem as well myself with audio-based material. They pointed out that there's a lot of value in what we do, and they'd really like to be able to take notes, but they're out and about, walking the dog and chasing the dog or whatever it is that they're doing. Well, what I'd like to say there and point out, just to remind everybody, is that over at PreneurMedia.tv, everything that we talk about in the show, all the links are in the show notes below the actual file that you can download. You don't have to do it through iTunes. You can get the file, listen to it online. You can see the show notes, click on the links to everything that we talk about from every episode. But also, there's a little bit of the delay with this, but there are transcripts of every episode. So if you make a mental note that there was something in the episode that was worth paying attention to, when you get back, pop on to PreneurMedia.tv and check out the episode page, and you'll have a full transcript. You can go down, highlight it, copy it, bookmark it in your favourite bookmarking service. Please do, thank you. Share it with your friends on Facebook, like it, Google Plus it, do whatever you want. But we provide that service for that very reason. We appreciate that not everybody learns and takes things in the same way. And so we try and give you as much backup for that as we can. So definitely use that resource, and while you're there, drop us a comment, obviously. But I just wanted to draw that one out because it was a very valid comment and something that I have a problem with too. So hopefully that helps a few people.
Awesome.
All right, Pete. Other than to remind everybody that over at 7levers.com, exciting things are going to be happening soon. Pop over to, that's the number 7levers.com, and sign up to be notified when we take our 7 Levers training course live. I think we can wrap up for the week.
Sounds good. We'll got some new exciting stuff next week, and we'll roll out some more Q&A episodes coming up as well.
That's great. Okay, everybody. See you next week.
You've been enjoying another fine episode of PreneurCast with Pete Williams and Tom Gosher. Make sure to hang out with the boys online at PreneurMedia.tv or drop them a line via PreneurCast@PreneurGroup.com.